Hello and welcome to Dragon Bites, the paediatric podcast aimed at paediatric trainees and anyone interested in child health. I'm Asim, one of the paediatric trainees here in Wales and one of the presenters for Dragon Bites. This week we're going to finish off our interview with Dr. Camilla Kingdon, the new president of the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. Two of our Dragon Bites presenters, Stacey Harris and Hannah Davies, were lucky enough to be joined by Camilla a few weeks ago. If you haven't listened to the first half of this episode, that was released last week, so please go back and have a listen to that first. Anyway, let's get started.
So importantly for me is what do you think the role of trainees and trainee reps should be in the college?
As a college member and a trainee rep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, I've frequently thought that trainees are essentially the canary in the lift shaft. I know that sounds a bit kind of gloomy, but if we don't listen to our trainees, and indeed if we don't listen to our junior nurses, we are missing the early warning signs of when things are not as good as they could be. Now that sounds a bit negative because, of course, trainees can also give us good news and can shout out about things that are going well. But I think if at the end of the day, as doctors, we're here to do the best for our patients, if that essentially is our kind of reason for raison d'etre, as it were, then listening to trainees who are right on the coalface and interacting with them meaningfully is absolutely fundamental to safe patient care. So I think an organisation that doesn't listen to their junior doctors and their junior nurses is missing a massive trick. And certainly in both my role as head of school in London, but actually more recently I've been the guardian of safe working in my trust and have tried really hard to kind of amplify the voice of junior doctors, because and we work in very complicated organizations now, and for the medical director and the chief exec, how could they possibly know what's going on across the length and breadth of their organization? But if they've got an engaged junior doctor group, they will know what's going on because their juniors will tell them. So in the same way at the college, we desperately need engaged trainees to be able to tell us, do you know what, I'm a bit worried about such and such, or this is brilliant and it's working really, really well, we need to do more of it. Without that kind of intelligence, we will be blinded to some real opportunities to improve. And I just think it's got to be fundamental to the way we work. So I think the more opportunities we can create for trainees and more broadly junior doctors, because I think it's really important that we think about all junior doctors, not just people on HEE training programs. The more we can engage with them, give them opportunities to join groups, be heard, the richer the conversation will be, the more we'll all learn, and the better potentially we can make it for us and for the services in which we work, and ultimately therefore the patients we look after. So I think it's just fundamental to good team working, and I don't really know why. It's a funny that you even asked that question, because for me it's just kind of so self-evident that that should be core business for us. And I sort of almost feel sorry that you've asked that question, because it almost implies that there isn't enough opportunity, or that it might be seen as a sort of frill or an optional extra, when it shouldn't be. We should be actively engaging with all our members. But I think the trainees in particular give us a lens on areas of our profession that are really valuable. And so, for instance, Laura Kelly and Laura as chair of the trainees committee, we now have a date in the diary and we meet up every 2 months. I'm sure I get more out of it than she does. But it's just about just spending an hour together, just bouncing ideas around, and thinking about the meeting last week that didn't go so well, or what could we have done better, or what are people saying about such and such. I think I think for me, collaborative leadership is fundamental to certainly the way I work. And most people that I admire in leadership positions work very, very collaboratively. Um, and I think
Camilla, you're talking about the pillars of compassionate leadership. So I've been learning about that, about attending,
right, yes,
because they've just launched them in Wales. And yeah, that's very much the sort of first pillar is you really, really listening to, who you're leading.
yes, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, nobody in a leadership position is. They may be an expert in a little area, but there's going to be huge aspects to the work they do that actually they know very little about. But that's actually okay as long as they have people around them and they're in listening mode. That's a brilliant leadership style, and I don't think anybody embarking on a leadership role should be worried about not being an expert in all the topics that they are kind of covering. You just need to get the right people in the team, enable them, and make sure we're all listening to each other, and that's the recipe for success. And I think as pediatricians, we're quite good at that because we're used to working in flat hierarchies across teams. I think it probably comes a little bit more naturally to us than maybe some of the other specialties. So I think training engagement is just fundamental to all of that. And at the college, there actually are lots of opportunities, well, for all members to get involved. And especially trainees. And I've been delighted, for instance, in our equality, diversity, and inclusion work, and also in our climate change working group. The level of engagement that we've had has been absolutely fantastic, and the energy that people are putting into the various work streams in these two big projects is just fantastic. And it's a win-win, isn't it? Hopefully, they're getting some good stuff out of it and connecting with people and meeting new faces and so on. But for a college, that's the way to do it, and it's just been fantastic to watch. And I think we're going to get some really great stuff, particularly out of those two groups. I'm really excited about that.
That's brilliant. And if there was anybody listening who was particularly interested in getting involved with the college, is there any advice you'd give them?
So I mean, we always have empty posts roles, at the college. So there's an area on the website that will list all the vacant roles, and so that's one way of doing it. And then there's if you're willing and keen, I would just contact Laura as chair of the trainees committee. Let me know, because we're frankly always short of people to do stuff, because there's the sky's the limit as to the amount of work we can do. And the number of times trainees have just dropped me an email, and then some piece of work has come up, and I've suddenly thought, that would be perfect, and they get them involved. So I think people should be free to just sort of say, here I am, really keen to get involved. What can I do? And I'll say, well, come and join the conference committee, or do you want to join an EDI work stream? Or we've got at the moment we've got a lot of undergraduate careers fairs happening where the college sends people to give a shout out for pediatrics. It would be amazing if we had some junior doctors join us for that.
Yeah.
So there are just so many examples of small little things, bigger projects. There's lots happening.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Twitter is amazing, and I know that you're on Twitter, and I'm fairly new to Twitter, but it's just really opened my eyes and really helped me to connect with other members of the Royal College. And I learned so much, get so many ideas. And I noticed on there that you said that your guiding motto was, is it Ubuntu? How do you say it?
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu, yeah, okay,
Yes,
Ubuntu,
that's
and
right. Yes.
it sounded very intriguing, and I wondered if you could sort of elaborate on what it is and what it means to you.
So I've been on a bit of a journey with this. So I'm originally from South Africa, and Ubuntu is a Southern African word. It's it's Zulu or Xhosa. So the two big tribes in South Africa are the Xhosa and the Zulu, and they have a lot of aspects of their language that are shared. Xhosa clicks, Zulu doesn't, but they have a lot of shared words. Ubuntu is a word that they both tribes use, and it literally means I am because we are. So this is this concept of kind of belonging and of humanity and of kinship. And the if you extrapolate it into kind of Anglo-Saxon language, the word the origin of the word kinship is kind, and it's where we get the word kind from. And Ubuntu and kindness essentially are all speaking to the same idea of connecting and understanding our humanity. And the reason I think this is so fundamental to the way we are as human beings, but particularly currently in the context of medicine and how we relate to each other and how we relate to the patients and families that we look after, is that kindness or Ubuntu allows us, if we just spend a couple of extra seconds trying to connect with people, to kind of invest on a level that allows us to tap into each other's emotions, feelings, and create relationships that are much more likely to be sustaining and meaningful. And this is not a sort of soft and fluffy kind of touchy-feely thing. This is absolutely fundamental to how teams work successfully, and how we successfully work with our patients. And where people have genuinely paid attention to this and been thoughtful about how they connect, using the principles of what are now essentially called intelligent kindness, because there's now an increasing kind of literature and evidence base for this. You can actually demonstrate improved staff morale, better staff retention, better patient outcomes, higher levels of patient safety. And so you start discovering that you have what the authors of the big pieces of work around this topic call the virtuous circle. So as we spend a little bit more time and energy thinking about each other as human beings and how we can connect meaningfully as fellow human beings, if you give that a bit of extra attention, so you develop this virtuous circle, which has all these positive spin-offs. Now that sounds incredibly kind of theoretical, but I'll give you an example. I was chatting to a colleague just on Monday, and he's a paediatrician in West London, and is very involved in engaging with the local community. And you'll be familiar with the fact that Grenfell Tower is in West London, and you know the catastrophe that happened there. And they currently are having a lot of problems with vaccine hesitancy. So the really struggling to get some people living in that part of West London to take up the COVID vaccine. And he was talking about how he was applying the principles of intelligent kindness to essentially engage with the local communities to really try and understand why is it that they are unwilling or hesitant about taking the COVID vaccine, and starting to unpick all sorts of issues, some of the aspects of what happened at Grenfell Tower and the sort of loss of trust amongst the local community in figures in positions of authority, and how that then eats away at people's ability to then confidently take up a vaccine because we're all being told to do so, as it were. And it's a really brilliant example of where if you can tap into people's lived reality and really start understanding why is it that you wouldn't want to take this vaccination, which to you and I seems such an obvious thing to do. If you can try and understand why it is, then you can start addressing those concerns and hopefully helping those people make a better, more informed decision about whether to take up the COVID vaccine or not. So I thought that was just a brilliant example of a little bit of extra investment of time and energy in that kind of human connection effort, how it can really give rise to extraordinary benefits for everybody. So I'm very compelled by this concept, and I think particularly as we come out of this disastrous pandemic. Everybody is carrying a lot of emotional baggage as a result of it. We've lost colleagues. Many of our colleagues have lost loved ones. There are a lot of people who are who've been very hurt and damaged, I guess, by the pandemic. So there's never been a time when I don't think this has been. This is such an important time to be connecting in a different kind of way, because I just don't think the status quo is going to do going forward. We have to find a different way of working with each other and with our patients. So that's a very long answer to your question, Stacey, but that's essentially where Ubuntu comes from. In South Africa, they use the principles of Ubuntu as we came out of apartheid, where so many people had been so appallingly treated, and it was very difficult to imagine how South Africa was ever going to cross that divide, where there was just generations of anger and hatred and mistrust, both on the white and the black side. And Desmond Tutu, who's a big proponent of Ubuntu, embarked on this extraordinary campaign of what was called the Truth and Reconciliation Campaign, where they actually brought victims and perpetrators of horrible things together and helped facilitate conversations so that they could understand the lived reality of these two different existences, and trying to help people bridge that gap. And they had some, I'm not pretending they fixed all the hatred and all the problems, but there were some remarkable stories that came from that, of people who were sworn and bitter enemies who came to understand what it was like to be in the other person's shoes, and actually how healing that can be. Because actually living with hatred is exhausting, and from a sort of psychological perspective, damaging. So actually to help people overcome that in a really deep kind of way is very healing. So I'm very compelled by it, and I'm absolutely convinced it could be a really, really kind of important way of moving forward.
I can't think of a better motto.
I know. I'm feeling a bit speechless, really, because that is really, really, really beautiful. Hearing you talk about
All
that.
about, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Other things to come from Twitter, also, girls, are the questions from our members. Who
Right.
I
had
selected only a few.
interesting questions for you. So one of them is, what was your biggest fear when taking up this president role?
I think my biggest fear, and it probably will be throughout the 3 years that I'm president, is my biggest fear is kind of inertia and cynicism amongst pediatricians. I think the college, what is the college? The college is all of us. We are the college. The college, okay, it's a building in Holborn, but actually the college is its 20,000 members. And I suppose my biggest fear is that if I can't harness people's enthusiasm and kind of desire to engage with each other and work towards improving child health, improving the workforce, being the best role models we can, in order to recruit people into the specialty, helping us understand where the problems are in the career path of a pediatrician. Nobody's pretending it's all starry and roses and fantastic. We have some real challenges as pediatricians that we need to address to make the life course of a pediatrician more sustaining. But we can only do that if people are prepared to come, roll up their sleeves, get stuck in, tell us about the things that are terrible, tell us about some ideas that work well, share their enthusiasm and energy. And so my biggest fear is inertia and kind of people just sitting cynically on the sidelines, kind of happy to moan, but not happy to come and get stuck in. That for me, if I looked back after 3 years and didn't feel that I'd managed to engage people, I would be very, very disappointed in myself. So that's my biggest fear.
And the second question, Stacey, you had?
So you've only been in the post for 2 weeks, but has there been anything that's been surprising to you, like any perks of the jobs at all?
A perk of the job was that somebody did ask me whether the college have an incredible wine cellar, like the Royal College of Physicians.
If only.
And I'm yet to find it. I wish I could say I'd found the wine cellar. I have discovered that the president has a very, very nice office with a huge desk with a sort of leather inlay. And I've never had an office in my life before because I share with 6 other people in my hospital, and we've used to being like a whole lot of sardines. So this is just the most extraordinary luxury. And so I can't wait. At the moment, the college is open 1 day a week, so I'm trying to go in every Thursday to take advantage of this office. But by September, when the college is opened, um, you know, 5 days a week, I'll be going in and hoping I'll be happy to entertain you in my office because it's got a very nice
I know you should
table with
start. Maybe
chairs.
you should
It's so
start a wine
civilized.
cellar. Everyone brings a bottle when they come visit you, and then
Yes,
that will be
yes,
your legacy as you start the Royal College.
that's a
Well,
brilliant idea.
and then there'll never be any gaps in the.
Maybe this is the secret.
Maybe it is. Why didn't we think of that? Fantastic. Yes. So please come and join me in the office in Holborn when you're next up in London because it's great.
Yeah,
But
maybe me and Han will come for a day trip.
I mean, yeah, yes, absolutely. But the great thing about it that I've discovered just in the last 2.5 weeks is actually, and it comes back to the kind of kindness thing. People have been so kind to me. It's just been really, really touching. The little messages I've had, and people who've really reached out in a not just a kind of well done, etc., but sort of said. Um, a health visitor contacted me the other day and said she's the chief executive of the Institute of Health Visiting. Fabulous, fabulous lady. And she said, "How's it going? You've just become president." And I said something like, "I'm 2 weeks in and I think I'm still standing." And she said, "I think you're more than standing. You're doing
Oh,
really well." And actually, I just thought that is such a lovely thing to say. And, um, there's some really, really good, nice people out there. And yeah, so there are plenty of examples like that, and that's been really lovely, and I'm incredibly grateful for that because it is, any new job, as you will both know, it's a bit scary, and you kind of think, am I good enough? Will I be able to do this? Have I done the right thing? All those kind of questions, and then to have the odd person say things like that, you just think, wow, it'll be all right because there's some great people out there, and we're kind of all in this together, and we'll be all right. So that's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, that's lovely. So it seems that cake baking, it seems to be a very big part of being a paediatrician.
Yes.
And it's Ash, isn't it? Kidney Ash.
Yes.
And he's doing something in the conference, isn't he? And everyone's been making all of these cakes. It's wonderful to see. So I was wondering what your favourite cake is.
Well, I've seen that cake that Ash has, the panata cake that's in Milestones this month, and a few people have been tweeting their versions, and I'm just amazed because I have to confess I haven't tried to make that cake yet, and I do love baking, but the thought of making 4 layers with different colours, I mean, can you just imagine what the kitchen would look like at the end of it, and all the bowls and all the washing up? But no, I love baking, but sadly, I have 2 daughters. The younger one lives on beans on toast basically and couldn't care 2 hoots about anything to do with cooking. But the elder one, Rachel, who's 21, is a brilliant cook, and she's rapidly becoming a better baker than me, which actually really upsets and annoys me. But her red velvet cake is to die for, and it's now officially better than my carrot cake, which was previously the best cake in our family. So I'm very upset to be able to have to tell you that. But yeah, her red velvet, to the point that my youngest daughter's birthday is in July, and I'm really cheesed off because she's asked Rachel to bake the cake for us rather than me. So it's the ultimate insult.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh,
Yeah.
we could talk for hours. There's so many things we could talk about.
Camilla, I just want to say that honestly, your humility, your passion, your Ubuntu, I'm really excited for the next 3 years. I really am, and I'm so glad.
That's really
It
sweet of
is
you,
so
Hannah.
wonderful. As I just see something. I suppose it's just a female leader thing, isn't it? You know, you see when you see it, you kind of like, you know, it's inspiring and wonderful.
Oh, well, and I think it's a female leadership thing is a strange one because I think it was Jacinda Ardern, wasn't it, who was asked about this, and I think her response was that it's not actually female leadership; it's a kind of feminine style of leadership, and men can do it as well. So it's not actually exclusive in that kind of way. And I think that is right because I think there's some brilliant men in pediatrics who espouse all the things that I think that we've been talking about this afternoon. And on the subject of men, we do need to be sure that we are still attracting great men into our specialty, because I think it's really important that we have a sort of balanced workforce, and I think it's absolutely terrific that we're now more female dominant than male dominant. But it would be nice to get it into a position whereby, we were attracting great men, great women into to working with us, so that we can make sure that our teams are balanced, not just balanced in terms of gender, but across mindsets and outlooks on life. And I think that makes for a rich team, is when you've got lots of
Diversity,
people.
yeah, it's makes for an amazing
Diversity,
team. There's lots of
exactly,
evidence for it, isn't there?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
So
Thank you. I think I feel like we've spoken about so many wonderful things.
do you think you've got enough to make
absolutely. I think it's going to be a really
this?
lovely podcast. Thank you so much.
And I just wanted to say thank you yet again to Dr. Camilla Kingdon for taking time out of her very busy schedule to come and speak with us. As Hannah and Stacey made really clear during that interview, we're all very excited to have Camilla as our new president and looking forward to seeing what the next 3 years brings. That's all for this episode of Dragon Bites. We're going to take a brief hiatus over July so as we can rest a little bit. So join us again in August, where we'll be back with some fresh new episodes for you. Thank you for listening to Dragon Bites.